Hello everybody, I hope you had a good weekend. It's a beautiful sunny day out there. Looks like the start of the sunshine is finally here, and we're heading into springtime. So, announcements for this week, not too much really. I mean, we don't have much more to go. You've got your BigQuery assignment that's due on the 14th, and I hope that I haven't heard any problems from anybody, so I trust that's working out really well for you. Then we have our group project presentations, which you're going to work on after the BigQuery assignment, which are due on the 1st of May. So, we only have a couple of more weeks to go, and we're moving our way out. Let's see, in terms of announcements, you've seen these links before. This is the same old, same old. And here's your assignment. Remember, I want you to put this onto a dashboard. So if you use your Data Looker Studio, now you can make those dashboard entries as interesting or not as interesting as you want. Some of the questions that you have for this assignment are basically tell me how many of something. Tell me something about the number of these compared to the number of these. Well, those are kind of just number answers. But there's other ones that are going to involve some thinking on your part and some paragraphs of actual written text. And we're going to look at some examples of different dashboards today that kind of illustrate where I'm going from this. Now, the questions that you're being asked in the BigQuery assignment are nothing special. I mean, they are straight ahead e-commerce related questions. And they're the kinds of questions that as an analyst you need to be prepared to answer, and not just sometimes as a number, but many times as well thought out paragraphs that are a discussion of why you feel the way that it is, the way that you feel, and how does the data support you in your feeling. That's the key component. The key component. How does the data support you in the way that you approach this problem and in your answer to the problem that you've been asked to work on? That's the key component here. So be sure to think about that before you just start putting down a number. The answer to this question is 23. Think about some of the questions, that's fine. Others are not like that. And, for instance, let's see. So, you might want to think the last one, what do you think explains the difference between the number of product page views for users who made a purchase and those who did not? Well, you could use the answers from your previous questions just to say, this is why I feel the way it is. Or you could dig in a little bit deeper. Look for more characteristics of those users who bought something compared to those who did not. That's the classic e-commerce question. It costs a lot of money to get new users to come to your site. Well, once they're there, you've got this big funnel. You've got the huge number of people who come to your site originally. Then you've got others, a much smaller number, that are going to set up an account on your site. Then you've got a smaller number from there that are going to look at things multiple times. Then you've got a smaller number from there, pretty small number, that are actually going to buy anything. Well, what e-commerce companies want you to do is to help them to understand how can they increase that funnel at each step along the process. How can you get more people to come to your site? How can you get more people to set up accounts? How can you get more people to look at things multiple times? How can you get more people to actually buy things? So those are the big questions that you want to answer. And these questions that I've given you are just kind of prompts to head you in that direction of how do we get more people to buy stuff from us. Now, remember, you've got a project presentation that you have to do with the dashboard. Well, I read everybody's proposals, and they all look good. You know, they're interesting, they're exciting. I'm, you know, really happy with the way that with the ideas that people came up with, and the way that you plan to address those. We have 8 different groups out there that are working on this class. The average size of the group is probably, I don't know, 3, maybe 4. We've got one big group, but that's okay. And but you know, all good. So this is kind of an outline that you could use as part of your project presentation with your dashboard. That would be fun. So let's look at some dashboard examples. Now I'm going to post these slides to my courses, and here are all the URLs of the sites that we're going to look at. So if you want to go back to them, you can, you know, look at them while I bring them up, or you can come back to them at some later time just by looking at the slide in my courses. So let's see. This is the last one I wanted to look at, and here it is first. Okay, so let's look at first this one. So this is a nice one. This is from the World Health Organization, and it's about COVID cases for the world. What a useful thing to do. And you'll notice that, you know, there's a lot going on this page. And this one looks pretty much exactly like something that you could make on BigQuery. It's probably running on BigQuery. But look at the way it's organized. So we've got a couple of controls over here. We've got, right now we're looking at the total number of cases. If we wanted to, we could change this whole thing around by just clicking over here, and instead of saying cases, show me deaths. And instead of showing deaths, show me vaccinations, because deaths is hard to say. And so, you know, we can move things around. Now, so this is a live piece of data. Now, I mean, arguably, you could say this was JavaScript, and we're just clicking on you know, having JavaScript reformat this thing. But I don't think that's the way it's working. I think it's probably connected back to a set of queries in BigQuery, and each one of those queries is reformatting things based on a geographic attribute. It's saying, you know, this data relates to the US, but this data relates to Angola, and this data relates to India. So, you know, it's nicely organized. The colors are pleasant for all the different things in here. We've got a standard web page format to this, which is fine. We've got a bunch of different ways to look at things. We've got our data provenance up here. This tells us where this data comes from. I love that. All references to Kosovo. Okay, all right. And we, you know, so we've got a lot of interesting stuff on here that relates to the topic that whose reason we're here for, and that's to understand more about COVID. Now, you know, we can scroll down. We've got, you know, attractive graphics built in here. We've got, you know, really interesting, really relevant. What's our last date in here? April 3rd. 2023. You can't get much more current than that. We've got relevant controls in here, which makes life a lot easier for us to work with the data, to reformat it, just because that's what I want to look at. And you know, global situation, number of deaths, situation by WHO region, and you know, lots of really interesting things. Now, each one, you'll notice that there are standard formats in here. These are for, this one's for Europe, this is for the Western Pacific, but they're organized in a very similar fashion where we've got different colors in here to make sure that the user can see that these are different regions, but the format of each one of these controls is very similar. What's behind this? Well, there's a query back there, and that query is running, and it's reformatted this thing. Now, the way that it's showing me the different numbers and things here, that's probably JavaScript, but the queries are running in the background and keeping things organized. Now, we've got, relevant things on the same line. How is this organized? Well, we've got a regional organization to it, but if you'll notice, it's not that we've got Europe confirmed cases on one side and Western Pacific vaccinations on the other. Why didn't they do that? Because that would make me as a user assume that the confirmed case numbers were equivalent to the vaccinations on the other side. And that's not true. Now, one misleading thing that we do have here is that when you look at Europe and Western Pacific, you're thinking, well, besides the timelines, these numbers are equivalent. But are they? And the answer is no. Look at our scales in here. We've got 10 million over here, and we've got 40 million over here. Now, why did they do that? Well, because it would have made the numbers, here we've got 8.6 million cases is kind of like the highest number, and 8.9 million cases, so they are roughly the same. So what's that doing over here, I wonder? Confirmed cases. So 12.2 million confirmed cases. And this one here is 42 million confirmed cases. But, look at how hard I had to dig to see that these numbers were totally different. The Western Pacific got hammered on this, at least in this one point here, but Europe's experience was very different. They never had the huge outbreak that the Western Pacific went through over a very short period of time. If you look at that, that's really a short period of time. That must have been awful in December of 2022. But here, look at how much slower the ramp up is, and in Europe it stuck around for a lot longer. Now, why did I have to dig so hard to see that? Because of the way that somebody organized this in a bad fashion. Look at all of these charts are whacked together in a way that came up with these different. They optimize things to make the graphs the same size, but not show the same numbers. And that's bad. You shouldn't do that. Look at the numbers are all over the place. Africa, and this is a big one for the whole COVID thing. Why Africa didn't get it as bad as the rest of the world. Look at the scale on their graph. It only goes up to 300,000. Eastern Mediterranean only up to 800,000, but Western Pacific we go to 40 million. So very different experience in these different parts of the world with the COVID epidemic. So interesting, but dig around, get a feel for this thing, look at it, and say, does this make sense? And how is this organized? How do we compare things? Look at the actual numbers. Here we've got 999,000 million cases in China, confirmed cases in China, and 102 million in the U.S. So very similar numbers, but look at the experience is very different. Theirs came, all kind of at once, and ours was much more spread out. And so look at the way this stuff is organized and how it works together to create a good expression of the experience of different parts of the world with COVID. Now, let's see. Now here's New York State. Once again, COVID, and so they've got this organized a little bit differently. Monitoring key aspects of the epidemic. Now, that's the title of this dashboard, monitoring key aspects of the epidemic. But they didn't stick them all on one page. Instead, the way that they organized them was to say, okay, here are our little thumbnails of all the different things that we're monitoring. And if you want to see these, you have to click on them to go see that particular dashboard that you're requesting, information about. So here's our reinfection data. I don't know why that part didn't come up very well, but still not there. You can also see that we've got, oh, there we go. I wonder if we've got anything up here. Still nothing up here. Bad sign. And come on, let's run our queries. All right, well, here's some of our queries. So not so well organized. It's okay. It's good to see bad examples too. And so here you can see how things are organized. And here we've got our cumulative first infections, then our cumulative reinfections. Then this is by region. And just so you know, we are Western New York. Although Rochester is kind of western and central, it's right on the edge. So whatever. But look at the way that they've organized this data and the way that they've got it figured out. Now, there's a lot of text in here that is also part of these dashboards. And an overview, which is really kind of like an introduction, and then look, what is reinfection? Talking about what's going on in this particular dashboard, explaining what the terms are, how does it relate, what does it mean, all those kind of things. Let's go ahead. Let's look at another one here. And e-commerce. We've got some groups that are working on e-commerce related projects. As I said before, I think that many of you will end up working in e-commerce for your career, and so knowing something about e-commerce and how to organize e-commerce dashboards is a really good thing to do. And so you can go through this stuff and read through it, and some of the things they're interested in are things like sales trends, website traffic, likes, clicks, and shares, business growth and revenue, customer engagement, any other metrics related to your business. Well, some of these are e-commerce vocabulary, particularly things like customer engagement. What the heck does that even mean? Well, that's something that e-commerce people spend a lot of time dealing with. Why? Because they feel that engaged customers are more likely to buy. And that's the whole point. So, you can look through these things over time. You can see, once again, we've got this standard layout where we've got a graph, then we've got a bunch of drop downs. This is a dead graph. In your dashboard, this will be live, where we can organize our different key performance indicators, KPI 1 and KPI 2, which allows the user to pick their own key performance indicators and see how they relate to each other. Pretty interesting. And then what exactly are we graphing? Here's our date breakdown, weekly, monthly, whatever. You could have different kinds of graphs that are set up in a way that makes sense for your e-commerce situation to show this stuff. And revenue and different conversion metrics. This is always a big thing. Average order value, shopping cart abandonment rate. What is that? Well, I think that's a really interesting one because we've all done it. We've all gone to an e-commerce site, gone around, checked on a few things, clicked on them, put them into our shopping cart, and then, the dog barks or, you got to go or who knows what. And you just don't end up buying them. What is that? That's an abandoned shopping cart. And that is just tantalizing to e-commerce retailers because they say, the user went to all the trouble to find their size, find the color they wanted, find the pricing, find, everything, put it in a shopping cart, and then just didn't do it. Didn't buy things that they already selected. That's a heartbreak for an e-commerce retailer. And so shopping cart abandonment rate, that's a big deal. What does it say? Does it say something about how difficult it was for the user to complete the transaction? Did it say that your website didn't work, so they tried to, select a shipping method, for instance, and weren't satisfied with the options that you have for shipping, or they tried to use a credit card, but it didn't work? There's a lot of things that could happen to derail a shopping cart, which, and cause it to be abandoned. What happened? So each one of these shopping cart abandonments, depending on how big a retailer you are, you may want to dig in and say, why did these people, abandon their shopping carts? What happened? Well, can we figure out what it was that made them change their mind or be unable to complete their transaction? What was it that happened? Here's another one. Where do our users come from? Way cool stuff. So anyhow, dig around in there. Here's a good one for you. Now, here's my last example. Now, this is even more interesting, I think, because you can see this one is by James Stanley, senior strategist, blah, blah, blah. And this one is about, I jumped a little fast there. So this is about currency exchange. Well, what is this dashboard really? Well, this dashboard is a couple of things. It's traditional data elements like this one here. And it's also, and there's a whole bunch of them, I don't need to scroll through them all, but they're all in there. And they're, all very similar. But what it is you're using data elements to support a journalist who is writing about the background on this. Now, did this journalist create all of these data elements themselves? I don't know. I don't know who James Stanley is. Old bald guy. We like them. And so, maybe this is all his work. Maybe he works with the data analyst who puts these charts together for him. He, writes the text that joins everything together. You organize this in some sort of standard fashion so that you can reuse it. You've got your CSS and your HTML all in here. You're just embedding these data elements as queries from BigQuery, and you're just sticking them into traditional web pages, and now you've got this really cool, really interesting, perhaps interactive, I'm not sure, well, sort of interactive dashboard on finance. Cool stuff. Well, that's all I've got for today, gang. I hope that you found it interesting, and I will talk to you soon. So get in touch with me if you have any questions about finishing out the semester. All we have left after your BigQuery assignment is your project. We're not going to have final exams this semester. You've already done that. And so have a good week, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.